All right, my hair's really tall. There we go. We're going to do another Mythical Creatures exercise. Looks a little bit different. I've got one video that talks about terminal customizations. I'm going to get another video that actually gets you all the way here. The reason is I like being able to enter the ls command and get it formatted nicely and things like that. So, okay, so Mythical Creatures. I've already done a couple of them. We're going to do another one. So we are in the, I can do print working directory, and that will show my current directory. So I'm in my /users, Josh Thompson, that's my name, /Turing, /Ruby, exercises. So then, if you do ls, you should see all the blue stuff is directories, and the not blue stuff are files. So we've got this gem file, gemfile.lock, don't worry about that. And then Mythical Creatures right here. So we are going to cd into the Mythical Creatures, and I can't type, and I love the tab button, so I'm hitting tab, and finishes it out. My prompt shows my current directory here, which is handy. Now I've got this lib and this test thing. I was going to, let's try hobbit. Okay, so I just did ls test. The ls can also take arguments, which are like little parameters passed in. So if I want to see what's inside, so if I do the ls directory, and I want to see what's inside the lib directory without like cding into it and then doing ls, I can do ls lib, and then hit enter, and it'll tell me what's inside the lib directory. I can also do ls test, and it'll tell me what's inside the test directory. If I want to see the contents of a file, I can do cat, which is concatenate, or if you prefer, you can just think of like a cat, like vomiting out the contents of a file. So if I want to see the contents of the hobbit test file, I can do cat test, because that's the getting me into the directory, and I do cat test hobbit, and then hit tab, and this is going to be the contents of that file, which is how I verified which file I want to take a look at. So great. I am going to just do Atom and dot. So Atom dot will open up all the current stuff in Atom. So here's Hobbit. Let's just run this file, because testing, this should not be the first testing video that you watch. So I'm going to run this test. How do you run a test? Now you tell me the answer. You do Ruby, and then you want the file that you want to test. So we'll do Ruby test hobbit.test.rb and hit enter. Oh man, this happens every time I do one of these videos. RPM use 2.5.0. It's because I'm using the wrong version of Ruby, and I've messed with my terminal a bunch, so it's not happy. So we're going to clear all that, and we're going to run the command again by hitting the up arrow a couple times, and then hit enter. The up arrow, by the way, is how you bring back stuff before, so I use it all day long. Command K clears the terminal. Okay, so we got an error in require relative. Oh, whoa. This is, whew, okay, I'm going to have to fix this. This is all hidden. Don't believe my terminal guide yet. Cannot load such file lib hobbit. Of course, because that file doesn't exist, so we're going to do atom lib hobbit.rb. That's going to open a file in Atom in the lib directory called hobbit.rb. Doesn't exist yet. We're going to split that to the left. We're going to open the sidebar up. We're going to bring our hobbit test back. Close the sidebar with command /. So now I have my test on the right and the empty class on the left, and this is what I like. So we're going to run that again and get a bunch of errors. So uninitialized, constant, hobbit test hobbit. Yeah, so we're just going to do class hobbit. End. Run that again. So the different error, whenever you're running tests, you want different errors as a step in the right direction. I wonder if I can make this float on top. Someone said it'd be more interesting to see someone talking through this than to just hear them. So this is my attempt to honor that request. Wrong number of arguments, given 1, expected 0 in initialize. So when you call something .new, which we're doing right here, that is aliased to initialize. So if you want to do something .new, you just need initialize. We're going to do def initialize and we know it needs to take an argument. So I'm just going to do name, and we're going to do at name equals name. Run it again. undefined method name for such and such on line 9. Testa has a name. So this failed. Hobbit.name failed. We're going to do pry. I'll just do this, binding. So require pry, binding.pry. I've introduced pry in other videos, so this should not be a surprise to you. So when I run the test, we're going to hit that, and then we're going to throw me into a terminal session with pry. So I can see line 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 looks the same as these, and I want to be like, what the heck is my hobbit object? So I'm going to call hobbit. There's my hobbit object. And I can see hobbit.name right there. You can see me pointing. Hobbit.name right there exists, but I got this undefined method name. So what I want to do is rebuild this assertion in pry and figure out why it's not working. So I'm going to call hobbit and then hobbit.name. Does not exist. Why the heck is that? This should not be surprising. I hope some of you are screaming, add the adder reader. So we're going to do that. Cool. Because you need the adder reader to make the variables accessible. You could handwrite them, but we're not going to do that. So now when we call hobbit and then hobbit.name, it works. Cool. All right, so we're going to take that out. Gonna exit out of that. Depending on how you have pry configured, sometimes triple exclamation mark will get you out. Sometimes you have to hit exit. Doesn't matter that much. So we're going to rerun the tests, and we have a passing test. Cool. All right, we're going to test. It's going to be named something else. That is going to pass because it's just creating another hobbit, sorry, not habit, with a different name. So test disposition is unadventurous, as hobbits are wont to do. We're going to take that skip out. We're going to run the test. Undefined method disposition for hobbit. So that's going to tell us we need a def disposition, and we'll figure out what to put there later. So now we expected homebody and we got nil. And QuickTime just randomly failed on me, so hopefully, all right, carrying onward. So we gave ourselves this def disposition method, and now it's expecting homebody and return nil. So it's worth noting here. This throws a lot of people for a loop. So we want it to return homebody, right? So we can just cheat and do homebody. And now when we run the test, it's going to pass. Let's try something else. What if we do homebody and then puts homebody? What do you think it's going to return? So we've got homebody, puts from homebody. Let's try it. Okay, so some interesting stuff happened here. And you should pay attention to it. So one, the puts is like print string or something. That caused homebody to be written to the terminal. Two, it expected homebody, but it actually got nil. How did it get nil when the last line of the method puts the homebody? And I'll show you. We can test this. So hobbit.disposition, we're going to do binding.pry. So we're going to hit this pry. And now let's call hobbit, because that's our new hobbit. So hobbit.disposition. Here's our putting stuff to the terminal. But this hash rocket shows that it returns nil. So what the heck is happening there? If we do puts hello, what do we get? We get hello printed to the terminal and nil. Puts always returns nil. So if your method ends with puts, you're never going to get anything but nil from it. So I would not recommend using puts that much. Now, what if we did home dog? That's a horrible name. Home person. So we've got homebody and home person. Let's move home person to the top. So we're going to exit out of this. We're going to exit out of the pry. And we're not. So that passed, whatever. Why does it pass? I could do 4 plus 4 puts. I don't know why this method is passing, but as long as the last line of the method is homebody, good to go. Take this away. We're going to comment it out. Run the test, and it fails. So just know that was hopefully just a useful little explanation on why the last line of the method Like we can be true and then false and then call like self.name. None of that matters as long as the last method is homebody, or the last line of the method is homebody. Ruby's super cool that way. So we just hard coded that to cheat. We'll uncheat in a moment. So we have this test passing. Test can have a different disposition. Now it's going to fail because we want adventurous to come back in certain situations, but this is going to return homebody. All right, wrong number of arguments given 2, expected 1. So let's read our test again. Okay, here. We are taking 2 arguments, Frodo and adventurous. So let's do name and disposition. We're going to add our adder reader here. And we're going to hard code at disposition equals disposition. Like this should read relatively cleanly. This follows kind of the same pattern as hobbit.name, hobbit.disposition. Sorry, I can't talk. Should work. It's not going to work. Whoa! Bunch of argument errors. It's look like a regression, right? So why did all this stuff fail? So now we have no passing tests and 1, 2, 3 errors, a failure and 3 errors, whatever. So now we have wrong number of arguments, given 1, expected 2, given 1, expected 2. So where would this have been from? This is coming from this test, and this test, and this test. So this initialize is expecting 2 arguments, but in these 3 tests we're only giving it 1. So we have to give disposition a default argument. So disposition equals, we're going to say disposition equals foobar. We're going to say xyz. Disposition equals xyz. Bigger again. This is how you set a default value. I've mentioned this in some other videos. So now 2 of the tests are passing, and we still got a failure because it's expecting homebody here. Because now, let's take that. We're going to take that away because now we have this .disposition thing. Homebody, and it's actually getting xyz. So we can test this. We're going to put a binding.pry here. Nope. Terminal. Back. We're going to put a binding.pry here, and let's take a look at our hobbit object. There's hobbit.disposition xyz, so I can call hobbit.disposition, and we get xyz. So we're going to make this default to adventurous, not adventurious. Run the test. Take the pry out first. Look at me learning stuff. All right, so now we expect it to sometimes be adventurous. We expected homebody. Right, because we don't want it. The hobbits, this test was the default disposition was homebody, so we're going to just put that there. So now if we create a hobbit, and here, let's do something else with pry. Binding.pry, run the tests. So we've got our hobbit object, right? So we can do hobbit.disposition. We can make another hobbit object. So this is super cool. So we're going to say hobbit2 equals hobbit.new. We're going to name him me. Sorry, I'm not James, I'm Josh. And we're going to say the disposition is homebody. So hobbit2. There we go. Name, Josh, disposition, homebody. You could do h3 equals hobbit.new, name, I don't know, it's another hobbit name. Frodo. We're going to do other Frodo. No, what's the guy with the ring? Like Bilbo. Bilbo, and disposition will be secretive. Boom. All right. Now we have all of these hobbit objects, which is super cool. And they have their default distribution. So we do hobbit3.disposition, and they're secretive. So when you're doing stuff in tests, I strongly recommend playing around, like sticking a pry in here, building new objects, etc. When you put a pry on the test side, it's going to stop there. So it's going to give you access to like the hobbit stuff that's in the test. If you put the pry over here, it would give you, like, it would stop you in the initialization method. So just know that there's like nuance there. All right.
get out of here. Pizza's going to be done in a moment. That was what I had in the oven, pizza. All right, unskipping this test, running that. Undefined method age for Hobbit. So what are we... when you have tests already written, I was telling someone this the other day, like a good test that's written for you is such a gift because it tells you... stop doing that. Tells you exactly what you need, exactly what you need the code to do. So when you have a good test, I strongly recommend reading it. You're going to get a lot of good stuff out of it. So eventually, when it comes time to write your own tests, you'll learn your code at a whole new level, but it's a challenge. Good tests are a beautiful thing. So we're going to make a new Hobbit. We're going to have hobbit.age. It's going to start at 0, and then 5.times. So 5.times means we're going to call hobbit.celebrateBirthday 5 times. And then we want hobbit.age to be 5. So let's initialize. We could do like def age here and like do all sorts of wonkiness, but this seems to be an attribute that hobbits have, kind of like they have a name and a disposition. They're going to have an age, and it's going to be 0. It's going to start at 0. Now, so we know this assertion is going to pass. So see here it said no method error, undefined method age. So when we rerun our tests, we still get undefined method age for Hobbit because I didn't do that. Okay, so now we have undefined method celebrate birthday. So let's give it a celebrate birthday. So we can do def. Another, I don't use this a lot, but you can do def tab. Def tab, there it is. And it kind of auto-completes the method name and end. I don't use it a lot because I don't mind typing end, but something to know. So we're going to do celebrate birthday, and let's run it again. I don't know what we want to do in there. Okay, so expected 5, and we got actually 0. So that means this assertion failed. So whenever Hobbit celebrates birthday, it seems that we want them to age 1 year, right? That seems reasonable. So let's put a pry in here because I don't know exactly what code I want to write inside of the method, but I want to be inside of the method to figure it out. Because whatever I figure out in pry, I'm going to then translate into this method. So self, I've mentioned this before, self is a super useful method. It just is basically the name of the current object. So we see that the self, we've got this Hobbit, age 0, disposition, homebody, name, Meriadoc. And that lines up with what we expect this new Meriadoc named Hobbit to be. So we can call like self.h, and we get that. Now, can we do self.age plus equals 1? Because you guys have probably seen this method elsewhere. And it looks like we can't. Can we do, like we're getting undefined method age equals. So I wonder if we could do self.atAge plus equals 1. All right, so definitely didn't like that. I'm not surprised. That didn't seem like valid code. I wonder what atAge is. Aha! Okay, so atAge plus equals 1. Okay, that worked. And we're incrementing. So what's self, and now age is 5. Okay, so that's working. I've mentioned this before. I'm going to mention it again. I don't understand why with attribute writers and readers, sometimes an attribute reader, you need it, sometimes you don't. I think if you're inside of the object, if the attribute is being called by the object itself, which is self, so we're calling it from self, you don't need the attribute writer to change the attribute. There's some complexity there's some nuance. In general, I wouldn't worry about it. So we're going to do atAge plus equals 1 every time you celebrate a birthday. So we'll call celebrate birthday, it'll make the age go up by 1, and we'll see if the test passes. Cool, test passes. All right, we're cruising. Test is considered a child at 32. So 32.times. So that means we're going to be celebrating 32 birthdays. We are going to refute, so there's a new assertion, hobbit.adults. So let's just stick a pry here. In case you can't tell, I love pry. It's a great thing. Half the reason I love Ruby. And because I don't know how to program in other languages very well. Okay, so we've got the pry here. We've got this hobbit thing that has celebrated 32 birthdays, so it's called hobbit. Sure enough, hobbit.age, 32. Cool. Now, when we call hobbit.adult, question mark, what do you expect will happen? I think we're getting a method error because we don't have a method called adult. Sweet. All right, let's fix that. So because adult seems to be a function of age, I don't know. Let's write a new method here. So we're going to do def adult question mark end, and it's going to return something. So we're going to bang out of that, run the test. It doesn't like that slash because I can't even hit the up arrow well. So now we're going to call hobbit, and adult question mark is going to return nothing because there's nothing inside of it. So refute. I wonder what refute does. So it expects 1 to 2 arguments. So let's try. So if you look at the mini test docs, let's just do that real quick. We'll pull this one out. You should be able to see that because the mini test assertions are super important. And if you ever come across a new one, I strongly recommend just Googling it. So mini test refute. Jump to assert, blah, 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 blah. We're going to look through this. Refute. So fails if test is a true value. So this means refute takes 2 arguments. The message could be empty, so we're just going to try to refute a thing. That's actually not super helpful. Let's try mini test refute example. Hey, this is the guide that's been linked earlier through the stuff that you should be reading. How handy. So I just control F for refute. That's control F that opens up this thing, and then you can do like refute, and it'll find all the instances of refute on the page. So refute is good enough, blah, 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 blah. Refute is good enough to not require a specific message, so let's try refute another. All right, I don't really love any of these examples, so we'll just carry on. Refute expects something to come back as nil or false. So if we could build up a little example. We could say true, and when you call true, true is true. So we can say true equals true, and that comes back as true. If we do true equals false, that's going to come back as false because true doesn't equals false. If we do false equals false, that'll come back as true. So if we do name equals Josh, because that's me, and we'd say name name dot class, and it comes back as string. So we could say string equals name dot class. That will be true. Let's say integer, or let's say name dot class equals integer. Typing is hard. Comes back false. So when you if we want to refute something, we could say refute name dot class equals integer, and that comes back as false. I was expecting true. Okay, well, I don't know everything. So we want to refute. If we refute false, does that come back as true? Dang it, refute true. Expected true to not be truthy. So we want, okay, let's screw all that. Just hopefully this is encouraging. I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. Hobbit.adult question mark comes back as nil. So if we refute hobbit.adult question mark, I bet it'll come back as, dang it, false. Why is, let's just take this out and run the test and see what happens. I feel like the test is gonna pass. Passed. Are we still recording? I think we're still recording. All right. We'll see. All right. So this passed because nil is a falsy value and refute expects false or nil. So this is going to fail because we expect it to come back as something truthy. So hobbit.celebrate birthday 33 times, and then we expect hobbit.adult to come back as true. So let's put I've talked about how to run a certain test before. We're going to do zzz. So now I want to just run this particular test. We're going to do dash n equals name, and then equals, and then this is shorthand for a regular expression, zzz. So this is going to look for the hobbit.test file for a test with the name that matches zzz. There's only one of them. So we just ran this single test. And let's now put a binding.pry there, because I want to hit this adult method in the context where a hobbit should be an adult. Here it is. So we can call self, and it's going to be this hobbit named Otho. There it is. And then self.age is 33. So we could say like true. It's going to return true if age is greater than 32. Right, because we want it to be true if the age is greater than 32. If not, we'll just do this. We'll see what happens. Cool, that passes. So let's now run all of the tests, because we may have just undone something earlier. Cool, everything passes. This isn't super clear, so this is just true if, and then we're kind of relying on the default value of if it's not true. So what I would do, what I'd prefer to do is return true if age is greater than 32. Otherwise, return false. So that's how I would clean that up. That makes it a little bit more explicit. It's going to say if this condition isn't met, we should return false, or we should exit the method with false. But if it is true, if age is greater than 32, we're going to exit the method early with true. So that makes it work. All right, still old at age 101. So this is going to be an exercise to you to write your own test, and then test Hobbit. We'll just bust this one out real quick. So Hobbit has the ring. So we're going to create another Hobbit. So I'm just going to grab that line. Oh, you can copy a whole line. If you just click somewhere in the line and hit Command C, it copies the whole line. Command V. So you don't have to like carefully copy and paste everything. And it doesn't grab white space. So like if I grab this where it's indented a couple of times and then try to paste it there, it doesn't mess with the white space, which is super handy. So we've got this Hobbit thing. Has ring if name is Frodo. So let's see, we're going to create a Hobbit named Frodo, which we've got there. Create a second Hobbit named Sam. Okay, so we're going to name this one Frodo. And then we're going to copy that again there, and we're going to name this one Sam. And let's take that line away. Check that has ring for Frodo returns true. So we expect, so we're going to assert. We could do assert equals true or just assert, and we're just going to do assert. So we're going to name this one Frodo and this one Sam. So assert Frodo dot has ring question mark. That should return true, and then we're going to expect that Sam. So we're going to say refute Sam dot has ring, and that's our test. So we're asserting that Frodo has ring, and then we're refuting that Sam has a ring. So let's unskip this and run it. And you should expect no method error. That's what we got. So let's try def has ring question mark and we need it to return true in some cases and false in others. So expected nil to be truthy, of course. So let's just say there's a couple ways. So we could start with let's say by default new hobbits do not have a ring. So at has ring equals false. New hobbits don't have a ring. And we can test this by binding.pry, put that in there, run the test. We're going to hit the pry, and so we can call Frodo. We can see has ring.false, and then Sam has ring.false. But if we call Sam.has ring, what do we expect? No method error because we haven't given ourselves the header reader. So now this has ring method, we could call has ring and just get that value there. So we're just going to say @hasRing. So it's going to return whatever this value is up here. So we can call like sam.hasRing is going to be false, and then sam.hasRing, and important to note, these are two different methods, is also going to be false. So how do we get sam.hasRing to stay false while frodo.hasRing to be true? Great question. So we can say hasRing equals false. So we're going to say return true if self.name equals Frodo. Like that'll kind of work. Otherwise, so we can take that out. Otherwise, return false. So let's try that. Frodo.hasRing question mark true. Sam.hasRing false. This isn't changing the value though, because if we look at the Frodo object, hasRing is still false. So we want Frodo to be like assigned the ring on initialization, and then we still want this hasRing thing to just read that value. So let's do something. We're gonna do something fancy. We're gonna hasRing equals assign ring on creation. So when we create a new, so what this is doing is we're gonna now have def assign ring on creation is this method, and this hasRing is gonna equal the return value here. So let's I'm gonna say I am a fancy method. So now let's re-inspect our object. So we've got Sam hasRing. I am a fancy method. Frodo hasRing. I am a fancy method. So this is getting interesting. So on the initialization, we're just calling this method, and we can do whatever we want here. So let's say return false unless self.name.downcase, because it might be Frodo uppercase, Frodo downcase equals Frodo. So we're going to do return true if. Return true if. This is getting complex, by the way, so don't sweat it if you're like, well, that seems stupid and unnecessary. It's a little bit true, but I'm making the video, not you. So you get to just watch around. At this point, you probably could have finished the whole thing. You've got more than you need. But this is opening up interesting ideas that might serve you down the road. So hasRing equals nil because return true if, and then that didn't do anything. So otherwise, we're going to return false. So let's call Frodo hasRing is false. Sam hasRing is also false. So Frodo.name is Frodo. Why did this not work? So we're going to put a binding.pry right here, and then we're going to run this test itself. So we'll do y, and exit out that, dash n equals y. All right, so let's see what our self object is. It should be one of these hobbits that's getting created. So this is Frodo. So self.name is Frodo. Downcase is Frodo, and self.name.downcase equals Frodo, which is what our test does, is false because self.name.downcase, we need to make this lowercase. I think it's safer to downcase it and then just assume the input is lowercase, because if like someone did Frodo, that would now be, Frodo, yeah, that would not match, but if we did that, that would. Okay, so we'll take that out, bang out of that, run the test again. So we've got our Frodo object, which is hasRing is true, cool. Now Sam should not have the ring, lovely. So now that means we need to change this hasRing question mark method to just return the value that we set up here, which is or we can just call hasRing. So let's take this pry out and try it again. And run all the tests, because I still ran .yy. Cool. Okay, So this was a lot of work, a lot more. This piece here is like fairly this is complex stuff. Usually you're not going to have to be writing methods that when an object is created, it goes and fetches this other method, but it's cool to know that this functionality even exists, or like this is an option. So this method gets run every time we create a new object. It's a good thing to know. We're going to call that a day. So I'm going to end the video here. Hopefully that was helpful. Sorry for it taking forever. Hopefully it's useful.